Hey, and welcome back to Jesse's Shed. Today we're doing the install on the Tow Pro Elite. This is the latest electronic brake controller from Redarc. This is a pretty simple kit, really effective and really good. This is the brains of it. It's the controller. On one end you've got a cat cable that goes to the control button, and the other end you've got all your control wires. This is that control button. This is where you turn up and down your brake force, and it's got a button on it for an override as well. It's very discreet, everything's hidden away. So that's the cat cable I was talking about that goes between the button and the controller. And then all we have is another cable. This has two sets of wires that go into it. So you plug that end in there. Then we have the positive and the negative wires. These just go straight to your battery. And then you've got the red wire, which is the brake controller. It's where it gets the signal from the brake, sorry, and then the blue one is where it actually sends a signal back to your caravan or trailer or whatever you're hooking it up to. This is all the kit comes with, but there's not too much else that you need really to install it. We need some cable to go to the battery and to the back of the car, and you've got a circuit breaker there. You can use a fuse if you want to, but the circuit breaker just helps. If it goes out, at least it'll come back on eventually. We've got some heat shrink here. We're going to use that when we're connecting the cables together. Got some various size terminals, just depending on what size your car needs. Electrical tape, silicone, and that's about it really. So let's get over to the Cruiser and start installing. This is a Sahara and it's still got plenty of spots to put the button. We've got this panel here, going to put the plug over on this spare button here. Underneath, there are some Cruisers that have a preset wiring loom. Mine doesn't. This is a 2015 model. So if we pull down this clip here, one in the middle and then one over on the left, we can get rid of this kick panel underneath and expose the wiring and see what your Cruiser has in it. Once that's off, if you look under here, there's a grommet going through to the firewall. Your main wiring loom goes through there. Over to the right of that wiring loom, there's actually a spare spot to put the wires through. It's been designed to have extra things put out. This is inside the engine bay now. You can see the other side of that grommet, and on the left there, that's that spare space. We're going to use that to pull the wires through and make a nice neat finish with it and make it watertight. The electrical wires will come across onto your battery here, and then you've got the other two red and blue wires. They're going to follow this one down. It goes underneath your ABS controller there. It then comes out, it goes down into your chassis rail following that same cable there, and then it finally comes out of that chassis rail at the back here, and it's a short jump across to your trailer plug, and it's going to tee in with the existing wiring. Now here's the wiring. I've soldered these together. I've then heat shrinked it and also electrical wrapped it to make sure it's nice and watertight. This join's going to be inside the car anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. You can see here I've marked one cable silver and left the other one blank. I've then also marked silver on this end of the plug, so once you got it in the car, you know which is which after you do your pull. Here we've got the wire. I've got a pull wire that I've pushed through. It then goes onto one cable, and then I've staggered it to the next cable. Don't put them all together at once because it'll be a really hard pull through that grommet. Stagger it through, and the other thing is make sure that you lube that cable up really well. You can use a proper cable pulling lube, which is ideal, or if you don't have that, you can just coat it completely in dishwashing liquid or something like that, but the rubber on rubber will make it a nightmare to pull through that grommet, so make sure you lube it up with something. So you can see here I've got a proper cable pulling lube on this, and it's just flowing through really easily. Just pull it through in long stretches. Make sure you keep going and checking. Keep the cables flat on top of each other. Don't have them all twisted around or it'll become really hard to pull that through. And yeah, just make sure that you don't go too far. Back in the car, I've pulled through enough that I can get all the way to the back of the car, but I've also got enough room to get to that controller. So let's move on to getting this panel out and getting that button put in. You just pop that one piece there, and it's a little bit fiddly. You can see I'm doing this with one hand and I still managed to get it out, but everything's just on clips in this section. You pop both of them out, and then you've just got to pop that panel to the left out a little bit further so that you can free that part there. There's two more clips that the large panel is clipping into the smaller one. Once they're free, it just pulls straight out. The reason I'm struggling here is I didn't have two hands, and yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare, but when you're not filming, you should be able to do it very easily. Once you've got it out like this, there's two white plugs at the back. You undo those and then the whole thing comes free. There's nothing else holding it in. On the left there, you can see those plugs. I'll just swap over to where they're undone now, and you can see exactly which ones to pull out. There you go, that's those two on the left there. You can see they've been undone now. Once you've done that, it's just a bit of wiggling and the whole panel and fascia comes out, ready to put that button in. Once you get it out, you can see this spot right in the middle. It's a perfect size for the controller to mount. It's going to go in between those two boxes. You just use a bit of self-adhesive Velcro, a bit on the controller and a bit on the box itself, and it mounts in there really nicely. You need to make sure that you mount this well. Use some isopropyl alcohol or something like that to clean everything down, because once this controller's in, it can't move. It'll calibrate its orientation, and if it moves around at all, it'll think the car's either stopping or accelerating or something strange like that, and it just won't work right. So once you've got that Velcro mounted up there, you've got to plug your cable in. Now this is a little bit difficult for me again with one hand, so apologies for the messy install here, but you just plug that cable into the end there, then the controller can come up and get mounted onto that Velcro, ready for the Cat 5 cable to go onto it. I didn't film installing the button onto the fascia, it's just drilling a hole and making sure that that fits well. Once you've got that Velcro pushed down, you can see there's a nice little loop here of the cable. You just leave it a bit open, don't pull it too tight. And then you've got your communication cable here ready to push into the back of that button. You can see it here installed in that blank spot. And all there is to do now is plug those two white cables back in, plug that communication cable in, and that's the interior of your car done. Now we're on to wiring up the exterior part. I've coated both of my cables in this Coro here. It's protective coating to stop it from rub or anything like that. I've got a yellow tongue that runs up through the engine bay, follows that other cable, and then you'll see underneath here where it drops into the chassis rail. I had to use two pieces of tongue because I was getting caught up on bits of stuff inside the chassis rail, so it'll pop out and then back in again and then continue running down to the very back of the car. You may find that it's easy for you to run all the way down, but I had other things already in that chassis. Down here, this is the final spot where it comes out, and then we'll link that into the trailer plug afterwards. So this will be the red and blue cable that's going to come out of this one. Hopefully you've marked that up, otherwise you're going to have to figure out which one's which. So here's that cable coming out of the chassis rail now that's coated in Coro. I've got a red and a black, which I marked up earlier. Those are then spliced into the blue and red cables that were already in the trailer plug. And the red one is giving a signal back to the control unit, and then the blue one is sending a signal out of the control unit to your trailer or caravan or whatever you have running through that auxiliary port on the trailer plug. Once that's done, this is the interior of the car. I've got the controller plugged in there. You can see it's nice and neat. You turn it down to lower your braking and turn it up to make it a harsher braking, or you can push the button for a manual override. You can see it glowing there. It can't find a trailer, so that's why it turns back off again. Outside of the car, we've then got the two cables that came through the firewall. Both have been coated in that Coro, and then there's RTV silicone in the hole to stop any water leaking back into it. The power cable runs up the side here. It goes through a 30 amp circuit breaker. I'll cover this better later, but it'll do the job for now. That goes straight to the positive, and then you've got your negative cable that comes out, and that goes straight to your negative on the battery. The other cable is obviously that red and blue one that we did earlier. It comes down, follows along there, and jumps into that chassis rail like I showed earlier with the tongue. That then is secured and runs all the way down the chassis rail, comes out at the back there, and it goes into that trailer plug. One little tip here, I used a 4.85 mil squared cable because I didn't have any 3 mil, but it actually recommends a 3 mil. Use that if you can, because it's just an easier pull through the grommet, and it also fits into the back of this plug better. I had to splice into the other wiring to make it fit properly, but just if you can use a 3 mil, it'll be a much easier install. So that about wraps it up, really. Everything else is just tidying up. Obviously, this is how I've done it. I'm not a professional installer, and if you don't feel competent doing this, you should always get a professional licensed auto electrician to do this for you. This is just a few tips and tricks on how I did it and how it works in a 2015 Landcruiser. So if this helped you at all, give it a thumbs up. If you feel like it, subscribe. I'm always taking on new projects and trying to put them up here, so hopefully I can put some other stuff up that interests you. Make a comment if you want me to do anything in particular, and thanks again for watching. Hopefully see you next time.